This is for educational use only. Our group grants permission for our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardines, to use this as educational material.
Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
I can't hear you!
Aye, aye, Captain!
Oh!
A few moments later. 1 hour later. Flashback. 2,000 years
To
later.
smoothly connect with the previous groups, let's briefly revisit what they discussed about the self. Earlier, we learned about the self can be understood as cognitive construction, something that is formed or organized in mind. Drawing from ideas of William James, the self has different components, particularly the me self, which represent who think we are. We also explored the distinction between the real self, who we believe that we are currently are, and ideal self, who we aspire to become. This idea highlights that self is not just something we are born with. It is shaped by experience, reflection, and social interaction. Building from this foundation, our group will continue exploring how the self develops and functions across the different contexts and stages of life. All of this discussion connects to our learning objectives. First, which focuses on nature and the self as constructed and evolving. Second, which emphasizes recognizing how identity develops through social interaction and personal agency. So as we move forward, I'd like to reflect on this guiding question. If the self is constructed in the mind, does that mean we have many self or just one?
Meanwhile.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Decadet Camoro. I'm going to tackle about the concept of multiple selves. The concept of multiple selves suggests that our identity is a collection of different versions of ourselves that emerge across various contexts, like school, home, or online. We naturally adjust our behavior to meet the social expectations of different roles, such as being a respectful student in a class, a relaxed sibling at home, or an expressive friend on social media. Rather than being a fake, this adaptability demonstrates social intelligence and flexibility. It's like a demon with many faces, where each sub-self is a genuine but different part of a single complex person. That's all.
Meanwhile.
The unified self perspective say that even though we play many different roles in life, we still have one core identity. You may act differently at school, at home, or with friends, but deep inside you are still the same person. Your main values, beliefs, and personality traits are usually stable or over time. For example, if you value honesty, you will try to be honest whether you are talking to your parents, classmates, or teachers. If you are naturally kind, the kindness will show in different situations, even if you adjust how you speak or behave. The way you act may change depending on the rule, but your core values remain consistent. This is called internal consistency. Your actions are connected to who you are. This perspective also suggests that our multiple selves are not separated identities. Instead, they are different expressions of one unified core. For example, you might be serious in class but playful with friends. That does not mean that you are fake. It simply means you are expressing different parts of the same personality depending on the situation.
Meanwhile.
So our tackle about the true selves. The true self is real, authentic. You, the part of you are the act according to your own values, beliefs, and feelings. It's who you are when you are not pretending, not trying to impress others, and not trying changing yourself just to fit in. When you feel most likely yourself, that's your true self showing. It's when you are action match your inner values. For example, if you value honesty, you choose to tell the truth when it's hard. If you value kindness, you help others because it genuinely matters to you. The true self requires self-awareness, understanding your strengths, weaknesses, emotions, and goals. It also involves emotional honesty, being real about how you feel instead of hiding it.
Meanwhile,
So I will talk about the false self. The false self refers to the version of ourselves that we create in order to meet the expectation of others. Instead of expressing who we truly are, we adjust our behavior so we can be accepted. For example, we may act differently around teachers, friends, or family because we want to fit in. While adjusting behavior is normal, it becomes a false self when we constantly hide our real thoughts and feelings. One common example of the false self is people pleasing. This happens when we say yes even when we want to say no, or when we prioritize others' happiness over our own needs. Often, this behavior is driven by fear, judgment, or criticism, so we create a safer version of ourselves to avoid conflict and protect our social image. However, the false self is not always negative. Sometimes, it helps us behave appropriately in professional or formal situations. It can act as a social shield, but if we rely on it too much, we may experience identity confusion. When we constantly perform for others, we may start asking ourselves, who am I really? Over time, we may lose connection with our authentic self. So the false self can protect us, but the true growth happens when we learn to balance social adaptation with authenticity.
The self as proactive and agentic means a person is capable of making choices and influence outcomes. We are shaped by our environment, but we are not controlled by it. We interpret experiences, decide how to respond, and actively shape our future. Personal responsibility means owning the consequences of our actions instead of blaming circumstances. Decision-making is how we express our agency through thoughtful choices, and goal setting gives direction to those choices, helping us intentionally move toward the kind of life we want to build.
meanwhile,
The self
Today, I will talk about the application of the agentic self in real life. The agentic self means we are not just controlled by situations, other people, or our past. We have the power to make choice and take action that shape who we become. For example, in choosing a career, we decide based on our goals and dreams, not just pressure from others. In changing habit, we take responsibility for improving ourselves. When we fail, instead of giving up, we learn and try again. That is agency in action. We also take control of our identity. We are not defined by mistakes or by what others say about us. Our daily actions, mindset, and decision slowly shape our character. So always ask yourself, what actions are shaping that person I am becoming? Because in the end, we are the authors of our own growth. Thank you.
meanwhile,
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brent Kisler E. Direk. I will tackle about the Erickson's theory applied to the self. What happens if the identity crisis is resolved positively? If the identity crisis is resolved positively, a person develops a strong sense of self. They become more confident in their decisions, values, and goals. They know what they want in the life and are more prepared to handle responsibilities, relationships, and future challenges. What happens if it is not resolved? If the identity crisis is not resolved, role confusion may occur. The person may feel lost, unsure of their goals, and dependent on others for direction. This can lead to low self-esteem, poor decision-making, and difficulty in planning for the future. Exploration versus confusion. Explorations happen when adolescents try different roles, interests, and beliefs to understand themselves better. Confusions happens when they feel pressured, overwhelmed, or unsure about who they really are. Exploration is healthy, but confusion can be harmful if it continues for a long time. Peer influence, family expectation, and career decision. Peer strongly influence identity by affecting behavior, interests, and self-image. Family expectation can guide or pressure adolescents in choosing values and careers. Career decisions also play a major role because they shape future goals and personal identity. Critical thinking. Are we still forming our identity? Yes, we are still forming our identity. Identity develop is a continuous process that changes as we gain new experience, knowledge, and responsibilities. What factors influence our identity most? The factors that influence our identity most include family, fears, culture, education, personal experience, and social media. Connection to LO1.12. This decision helps us analyze identity developed by understanding how adolescents form their sense of self and how different influence affect personal growth, which supports learning outcome 1.12.
Meanwhile,
good day everyone. For our final part, we would like to present our own developed perspective called the integrative agency theory of the self. After discussing multiple versus unified selves, true versus false selves, the agentic self, and the theory of Erik Erikson, we realized that the self cannot be explained by just one idea alone. Our theory proposes that the self is an evolving system that integrates our multiple roles into one developing identity. We believe that we do not have completely separate selves. Yes, we act differently as students, friends, children, or leaders. But these are not different identities. They are different expressions of the same core self. What keeps these expressions connected is our values. For example, if I value honesty, respect, or ambition, those values guide how I behave in different settings. I may adjust my behavior depending on the situation, but my core principles remain consistent. That is what makes the self unified, even if it appears multiple. Another important part of our theory is authenticity. We believe that identity becomes stable when our actions align with our values. When we constantly act against what we truly believe in, we experience confusion or internal conflict. But when our choices reflect who we really are, our identity becomes stronger. Lastly, we emphasize agency. The self is not only discovered, but it is constructed through repeated choices. Every decision we make reinforces a certain version of ourselves. Over time, these choices shape our identity. This connects with Erikson's idea that identity develops through stages, especially during adolescence. We are not just passively shaped by society. We actively integrate our experiences into who we become. So, in conclusion, our theory suggests that the self is flexible but unified, socially influenced but personally directed, and continuously developing through authenticity and choice. Thank you.